Where is it? Do you have the microphone there? Okay, take.
Maybe he expected this, because I think that he knew from his childhood that his family was so averse to his going forth that they would not, after 12 years, recognize him, and that they did not respect monks or but that they held an enormous grievance.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think he, and probably my guess is also he probably felt at that time that in order to maintain his position as a monk, he could not reveal to his family who he was, because he felt he changed identity. He could not appeal for special treatment from his family. Once he had done what he knew his family didn't want him to do, and he effectively disowned his family. So
but still he came back to Tulakotita with the intention of visiting his parents, because his parents, when he left, had requested that he come back to visit them. And so one would expect him to get some kind of greeting from the parents. I should tell you at least one incident in my own, my own life. When I became a monk in Sri Lanka, and I lived in Sri Lanka for 5 years, then after 5 years I thought I should come back to visit my parents, and so I told them I would come back to visit them. And I arrived back at the airport. This was John F. Kennedy Airport. Now this is what I learned from my father afterwards, that I was coming down some steps, or maybe coming out the door in the arrivals building. I didn't see what had happened, but my father told me later that my parents had seen me before I saw them, and so when I became visible to them, my mother had said to my father, "That's not our son. Let's go home." But my father said to my mother, "Yes, he's our son. We have to accept him." Okay. Katie, were you going? Yeah.
Maybe his practice has gone far enough along that he no longer has a sense of desire for coming into being. So his relationship
No longer.
the desire for coming into being, or has that aspect is gone. So it's just that his relationship to his own parents has changed and become very manifest.
Yeah, but still, I would still think that, the relationship with the parents has changed that much. So if there's a total break, then he wouldn't go to visit them. Well, they requested, and so he's going at their request. So, he wouldn't really be fulfilling their request if he comes back, and then, without revealing himself to them, he just goes back to Savatthi to visit the Buddha, or to stay with the Buddha. He can't then think, well, I went to see my parents, but they just drove me away. Asman, did you have an idea? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he showed equanimity, but in my view, one could show equanimity by saying, "Father, I'm your son. You wanted me to come back, so now I've come."
Along with the equanimity, I thought of the phrase "first things first," and he's on his alms rounds, and I see him figuring that he'd deal with them later.
That's a very good idea. That's a very good suggestion. Yeah, that's really good. Like, now he's on to the alms round, so he has to complete the alms round. And so probably he's maybe thinking, okay, let me collect my food from the different houses. When I have enough, I'll go off, take my meal, then I'll come back at a later time. Did Yurong had her hand up?
I was going to say it's almost the same answer. Alms round, but I don't know if there's any rule if you go to a house on alms round and you get refused, can you open your mouth and say something so that people give you food?
Normally one doesn't do that.
Yeah, so I think in this case,
Yeah.
alms round, if he opens his mouth and I'm your son,
Yeah.
he say, okay, you should give me food.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'm a teacher or I'm a good person.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not the right.
Yeah, very, very good. I think, yeah, both Barbara and Yurong have put your fingers on the point. Oh,
The next paragraph, the slave
okay. Yeah, I'll take that. I don't want you to mention it before we go through it. I think I know what you're going to say, but we'll come to it, yeah. Okay. Okay, now we continue. And this is interesting. What comes next? Okay, just then a slave woman belonging to one of his relatives was about to throw away some old porridge, stale porridge. This would probably have been some rice gruel, rice porridge maybe from the previous evening. Of course, now Ratthapala is walking for alms in the morning. So when Ratthapala saw this, probably he had passed by the veranda or porch. Do we use the word veranda in English? Veranda.
Veranda is pronounced a little differently, but yes, especially in the South.
In the South, okay. Do we use the word Elmira? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what that means. I'm from the South. Elmira's a town near where I grew up. Elmira, what does that mean? It's a town now.
Almira.
Elmira.
No, we don't use it. Okay, these are what I call Singlish terms that I picked up in Sri Lanka. I thought veranda is one. They never say porch, but it's veranda. Then Elmira is like a cabinet. We would call it a cabinet, right? Where we put things, put it in the Elmira. Okay, so the father is sitting out on the porch or in like the front room, and since he's rejected Ratthapala has passed him by, and maybe there's like a sort of side door of the house which the servants use, but not the house, the masters of the house. And so now the servant is out, or the slave woman is out that side door, about to throw away that old porridge. And then Ratthapala sees her and says to her, if that stuff is to be thrown away, then just put it here in my bowl. I mean, normally as the monk, we don't request people to give food, but probably in this case, because Ratthapala sees that she's going to throw it away, so rather than just waste it, put it in my alms bowl. Okay, now, while she is doing so, she's putting the porridge in the bowl, maybe using a ladle to scoop it out and put it in the bowl. She recognizes the characteristic features of Ratthapala's hands, his feet, and she heard his voice. And so she realizes that this mendicant monk who's come to the house, this is none other than the master's son, Ratthapala. She goes to the mother and she says, you should know, my lady, that the young master, Ratthapala, has arrived. Now, isn't it a bit peculiar that the father didn't recognize Ratthapala? The father, but the slave woman recognizes him. How do we explain this? Okay, take the microphone, Barbara.
The father, even from afar, was reacting rather than responding.
Yeah.
He didn't take time to take in
Yeah.
what was really going on.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
The slave was interacting with him in the process of giving orders.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's possible that the father's mind was just so overcome, overwhelmed by anger and resentment, yet so that he didn't even register the facial features of the monk coming towards him. But he just, the way we impose categories on people, he just sees this figure in the distance coming towards him, and just the category, a monk follower of Gautama has come. Those are wretched people, rascals, despicable. Then he sees he's coming to my house, he's going to be begging from me. Get out of here, get out, we don't want you.
Yeah, it's a good example of the effect of the hindrances, like the pot of water that is boiling. This father's so angry he can't
Yeah.
speak against his son, but his servant.
Yeah, maybe Yurang has some idea.
I still look at this as a plot of the story.
Yeah,
Because the father is the Brahmin and the slave is at the lowest level. And then so they're putting the appearance of the monk at the level of the slave. So the father, so in his Brahmin's mind, wouldn't look at the monk just like he would look at a slave.
mm.
Really trying to think about what the characters in the story is thinking about.
Or what?
Rather than trying to figure out what the characters in the story they're thinking about.
Yeah,
I think we should look at the mind of the person writing the story.
yeah. So I have to say that I don't get the impression that Ratthapala's family is a Brahmin family, even though the beginning it describes the Tulakotitas as the Brahmin householders of Kulatotita go to hear the Buddha preach. But if somebody, in the Buddhist text, if somebody is a real staunch member of the Brahmin clan who's living the Brahmin way of life, he's always described as the Brahmin so-and-so. Or sometimes it's just the Brahmin. When they describe somebody as like the householder, rather than Brahmin, it suggests that they're not from the Brahmin class, but from the class of the Gahapatis, the householders.
But anyway, the contrast is he's trying to bribe his son with women and wealth.
Okay, we'll come to that. We have to avoid what they call spoilers.
Actually, I'm not surprised because I think it's quite common in the wealthy family. They hire slaves or servants to take care of the young children.
Exactly. That was just one of the things I was thinking of. Sometimes I have to go into Manhattan for various reasons, and what strikes me when I'm walking through, residential parts of Manhattan, sometimes I see this on Long Island, there'll be a little white baby, but in a stroller or a carriage, and the woman, sometimes I've seen this on the subway trains also, the woman taking care of the little baby will be dark-skinned, either African American or somebody from, maybe coming from like the Philippines or Latino, South America. And so now it's become customary, I guess, or common in like wealthy, fairly well-to-do families, probably because the man is working, the mother is working, so they'll hire a woman to come and look after and bring up the child. And so I see, like the child, sometimes I've seen is like hugging you call it the servant woman, or what's the special name for the woman who takes care of the child? The nanny, hugging the nanny. And I've even seen situations where there was a few of them sitting together. The woman who looks like the child is like, obviously I infer that's the mother, and the nanny is holding the child, and the child is hugging the nanny, not the mother, as though the child feels more affection for the nanny than for the biological mother. So probably, in this case too, it was always the slave woman who was taking care and bringing up Ratthapala. So the mother, because she might have been like high class, and so she wouldn't do such lowly tasks as breastfeeding the child, but give it to the slave woman, having to change the child's diapers, having to dress the child, bring the child up, just, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The child comes, sits with the family, and then goes off, and maybe even the slave woman is the one who plays with the child, gives the child toys. Okay, so the slave woman then comes and she reports this to... Oh, was there a question in the back? Oh, I see. This is... You ask your question, then I will see whether it's going to be a spoiler or...
The next sentence, models of wages, what you said is true, you are no longer a slave.
Yeah.
That, I want to know why, when she recognizes it as her son, why the mother said, because you recognize he is my son, you are no longer a slave. Why?
Okay.
Why she say that?
Okay.
She changed her status from slave to no longer
Yeah, I mean, this was done in India. First, India at the time, the time of the Buddha, apparently slavery was quite commonplace. I don't think it was a cruel slave system in which the masters, the way we have slavery depicted in the South, where they would beat the slaves and force them to work exceedingly long hours. But it was just part of the established social institution. But there were a fair number of cases mentioned in the Vinaya, as well as a few other suttas, where slave owners, if the slave will do something especially beneficial to the family or to the master, they will give the slave their freedom. We find this in the description of the 5 hindrances, where one of the hindrances is compared to slavery. And then they speak about the slave being freed and then being able to go wherever he wants. So it was a quite common practice for people to release their slaves. Okay, so then Ratthapala's mother goes to the father and tells him that she just says that the clansman Ratthapala has arrived. Apparently, at least according to the text, she doesn't tell him that the wandering monk that you chased away was Ratthapala. But just then it says that the Venerable Ratthapala was sitting by the wall of a certain shelter. It might have been a kind of shelter built within the town for wanderers, people wandering or traveling. And so he was leaning against that wall, eating the food he had collected on alms round, including the old porridge. Somehow the father knows that he's eating old porridge, which is, I have to say, that seems a little bit like a literary interpolation. How would the father know that he has the old porridge in his alms bowl? Perhaps. But it seems a little bit too convenient to make an interesting story. Okay, so the father goes to him and then says, now he's speaking sweet, sugary words. He says, Ratthapala, my dear, surely there is, and in the Pali text, it seems like the sentence is cut off here. And the commentary explains, how does the commentary know this? I don't know. But the commentary says that the father meant to say that there is wealth in our home, but because the father was overwhelmed by emotion, he couldn't complete the sentence. And so he says, surely there is, then his voice gets choked by emotion, and then he just blurts out, and you'll be eating old porridge. Can't you come to your own house to eat? Okay, and then Ratthapala replies and says, how could we have a householder when we have gone forth from the home life into homelessness? We are homeless one's householder. We, and this is what's called the royal plural, and I went to your house, but I didn't receive any alms food from you, nor did I receive a polite refusal. Polite refusal, that means sometimes, like if a Buddhist monk will come to a home and the family doesn't have any food prepared, so the people will come out and say, oh, I'm sorry, Venerable Sir, but we didn't prepare any food yet for today. Can you wait a half hour while we prepare something? Then usually the monk will say, well, much merit to you for the thought, but we have to get back to the monastery, and they'll continue on the alms round. But here he didn't receive even this polite refusal, but instead he only received these rather aggressive, abusive words. So then the father now is probably rather embarrassed and ashamed of himself and feeling apologetic. So he says, come, dear Ratthapala, let's go to the house. Like now the father wants to compensate for the abuse that he rained on the head of poor Ratthapala. But Ratthapala now gives him a polite refusal, and he says, enough, householder, my meal for today is finished. Apparently the father wanted to bring Ratthapala to the house in order to offer him food. So now the father invites Ratthapala to come to accept his meal for the next day. And Ratthapala consents, the text says, in silence, probably by that polite gesture of sort of going like this. It's the way of consenting. Okay, so now the father has a scheme in his mind when he has invited Ratthapala. So he takes, the father goes back to the house, and he has the gold coins and the blocks of gold made into a large heap, and he covers this heap with coverlets and maybe blankets and mats. So the father is obviously going to try to tempt Ratthapala. If he were a present-day father, maybe he would go to the automobile shop and buy a, what is a BMW or Mercedes, and bring it back to the house and cover the car with a big cloak of some sort. Okay, and then the father goes to Ratthapala's former wives and says, come, my daughters-in-law, adorn yourselves with ornaments in the way Ratthapala found you most dear and lovable, that is in the past when he was living at home. Does anything seem a little bit incongruent here? Something a little bit puzzling? Just speak with a loud voice. Oh, it's on, okay. It seems,
that the father
yeah.
or the wives themselves would have viewed the Ratthapala before when he wanted permission, but they didn't speak about that at all.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, it would seem, this is where it seems a little bit odd that one would think that if Ratthapala had been married, and since this is a wealthy family, as was customary in ancient India for in a wealthy family, often the young man would have several wives. One would think that in the passage where that is relating how the parents tried to tempt Ratthapala not to go forth and become a monk, they ask his friends to go to appeal to him, but there's no mention of the wives there. Richard, take the...
I suspect the reason for that was that it was the Hindu norm that the husband should be 1.5 times the age of the wife. He was 20 when he left. His wives at the time would have been child gods. That is, they would have been, 8 or 12 or so. And the mother-in-law would have treated them as vastly inferior. And so, and also he would have been thought that he really shouldn't pay attention to them and so on. So they simply wouldn't have had enough status at the time that he was 20 to be able to have any effect on them.
That's possible, but if you said that the husband should be 1.5 times the age.
The bride is supposed to be 2/3 the age of the husband.
Yeah, so if the husband, if Ratthapala is 20,
Well, then the bride should have at that time been about 14.
yeah. Now there's a big difference between 14 and, 8 or 10, in that at 14 they probably would have passed.
The time that he probably would have been married was about 18, but they at that time probably would have been about 12.
Yeah. But the,
But now when he's 32, 12 years later, they're 24.
But the text does say, adorn yourself with ornaments in the way Ratthapala, apparently in the past, found you most dear and lovable, and this would imply a kind of sexual attraction. It's not like behave like the little girls that Ratthapala found very cute when he was living the household life. Like 8-year-old girls, oh, so cute. But rather it's, 14, 15-year-old girls, since it was quite normal for the man to be quite a few years older. If he's 20, he could still be sexually attracted, to have sexual relations with them.
Well, they also in a wealthy household.
Yeah.
That is, the wives would have been wearing a lot of jewelry.
Yeah.
At a very early age.
Yeah.
Because it was normal for women to wear the wealth of the family. They would have been part of their status as members of the household to have a lot of jewelry.
Okay, did you have something to say? But I think the point that you made that the women as the daughters-in-law would have been vastly inferior within the structure of Indian society, and so the parents would not have given much heed to them, and they might have thought that Ratthapala would not give much heed to them. That's a possibility.
That's kind of what I was thinking, that really the role of women was not a high one.
Yeah.
In fact, earlier when they're talking, the slave comes to say that Ratthapala is there, she refers to him as their son.
The Lord's son, yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't say your mother.
Yeah, he doesn't say to the mother, your son, but the Lord's, my Lord's son, yeah.
And I think here they wouldn't have, the wives would not have been felt to have the same status.
Yeah. Okay, Richard has some other comment?
Yeah, part of the reason for that is that in the Hindu system, men can be twice born. That is, they have.
Oh, that is true, yeah.
And women cannot be. Women were on the same status as Shudras. They were once born people because they
Mm.
having the Pranayama ceremony, and therefore also they couldn't own land. As it was understood that any wealth that
Mm.
they had actually belonged not to them,
Yeah.
to the husbands and fathers.
Mm.
And so it's when she says, well, the Lord's Son has come back
Mm. Mm.
because all of the entire household revolves around the relationship between father and son.
Yeah.
And the father, you see that also by Hindu law,
Mm.
the father cannot have a good rebirth unless his son
Yeah.
prays for him.
Yeah.
The son is obligated to pray for the father's soul.
Yeah.
on his
Yeah, that's also a very...
years.
Yeah. But I wonder how... Yeah. Actually, the Shraddha rite is mentioned in Buddhist suttas. Yeah, so it already existed in the Buddha's time.
And so this is part of the idea that he's the only son.
Yeah.
That means that he is the only son who is able
Yeah.
to assure his father's rebirth.
Yeah.
So that once he becomes a monk, then the father also says, okay, you come back to visit. He concedes that point.
Yeah.
But once the son's a monk, essentially he's saying his son is dead to him.
Mm.
He's not recognizing the son when his
Mm.
son returns.
Yeah.
Because it's like he's already written him off, saying, okay, so you may return, but that you're not, you are not fulfilling your either your civic or your religious obligations to me anymore. And so there's a disowning. The son is basically disowning the father, but the father in consequence is disowning the son. Now he's,
Mm.
back. Presumably, I mean, his wife or something may have thought for a long time that the son was going to be coming back in a few months or in a year.
Mm.
But after 12 years, probably the family had given up on it. It's also, when Odysseus returns to Ithaca, the first person to recognize
Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah.
is the nurse.
Yeah.
Right? And part of the thing is like that is everyone presumes that Penelope's going on weaving and so on is this kind of false presumption.
Mm.
They don't believe
Yeah.
that he's coming back.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on. Did Sandy, did you have something to add? Wait, take the microphone.
Paula returned after 12 years, and his wife, even when maybe she's a teenager when he left, and when he returned, he's already grown up. She grown up already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the parents ask the wife to try to do something.
To tempt him.
Yes. That's the appropriate age to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let us continue. Okay. So now the next day, through the night, the father had good food of various kinds prepared in his own house. Then in the morning, he had the time, and he had sent somebody apparently to the park to announce the time to Venerable Ratthapala to inform him the meal is ready. So then Ratthapala dresses, takes his bowl and outer robe, goes to his father's house, and he sits down on the seat that's prepared for him. Then when Ratthapala is seated, apparently maybe even trapped, so they have somebody like strong guards standing at the door. Then the father removes the covering from that pile of gold coins and blocks of gold. And he says, "Dear Ratthapala, this is your maternal fortune, one part of the heap. This is your paternal fortune, that's another part of the heap. And this is your ancestral fortune, another part of the heap. Dear Ratthapala, you can enjoy the wealth and make merit." Again, that appeal to the possibility of leading a virtuous life in the world while doing deeds of merit. And come, dear Ratthapala, abandon the training and return to the lower life. That's the life in the world. Enjoy the wealth and make merit. And now Ratthapala speaks rather sternly to his father. He says to his father, first he addresses the father as householder rather than father. He says, householder, if you would follow my advice, have this pile of gold coins and bullion loaded on carts and carried away to be dumped midstream in the river Ganges. Why is that? Because on account of this gold, pile of gold, there will arise for you sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. What do you think of that saying? Okay, we'll just wait till the clanging is finished. Were you going to speak, Johnny? Okay, you could hand the microphone back. You have to speak loudly because we have competition.
Obviously the rivers were worshipped in India and the headwaters of the river, so maybe he's saying, make merits.
No, I don't think it's a sacrificial offering to the river. Probably it's just that the river Ganges is flowing nearby. Okay, see you wants to speak.
I think, perhaps based on my own dad's experience too, so not seeing actually pain and suffering is, that's kind of what leads to want to delude themselves in like everything is good and
Put the microphone closer.
not seeing pain and grief, which is also part of the reality.
Yeah.
That's kind of what leads one to kind of delude oneself,
Mm.
imagine that everything is always good.
Yeah.
Because seeing this, it forces you to actually look for a solution that is beyond the ordinary things that are so temporary,
Yeah.
that are not so solid. The
Yeah.
other thing is, hasn't Buddha himself said that Shraddha, I don't know what is that, Shraddha, which is faith,
Yeah.
arouses on sorrow and lamentation?
Oh, well, there is a statement that comes in one sutta that suffering is the supporting condition for faith. And keep it concise because I want to try to get. Yeah. 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 This is a traditional Buddha statement. You wrong? You want?
I think the question you asked is what we were thinking when we read that passage. And what I was thinking is that what a waste. Why couldn't the Venerable just tell the householder or his father to give the money to the poor? See that he sees gold coins or wealth as absolute evil. Well, whoever gets it is bad. Otherwise, why wouldn't he just give it to people who need it and make gold?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think he's focused on the gold. I think he is seeing, by now he can see
Yeah.
that attachment to wealth and greed is producing suffering in his father.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way. Yeah. Yeah.
Advice that isn't just.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What? Oh, Clement, you want to say something? Yeah. Of course, the wealth is impermanent. But I had something else in mind. I would think that Ratthapala should have, well, this is my conception, sort of gently told the father that, I've become a monk, I've given up concern with gold and silver, it's not something that I'm involved with, but we're following the Noble Eightfold Path of the Buddha, And if you want to find happiness, of course you can keep the wealth and do meritorious deeds with it, but you should also recognize the impermanence of wealth. And while living the household life with wealth, you can do meritorious deeds. You don't have to ask me to do them. But you should also recognize that all of these things are impermanent, the enjoyments they bring are impermanent. And so you should also practice the same path that I'm practicing to liberation. You know, rather than make a rather provocative statement like that, which is sort of a little bit painful to the heart, you speak gently and compassionately to the Father and try to awaken good seeds within his mind. Okay, maybe we'll stop at this point and then we'll continue. We'll have discussion period after the lunch break, and then we'll continue with the sutta next week. Next week is 15th plus 7, September 22nd. Okay, so we'll come back about 12:10, 12:15 to have a little discussion. And now we'll end with the sharing of the merits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata chaham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe devanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata chaham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhutanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Bhavag upadaya avichihetato etantare satakaya upapana rupya rupicha sanya sanyino Dukha pamuchantu pusantu nibuting. Okay, we could stand. And then we end with the 3 half bows to the Buddha.